Morning, everyone. Thank you very much, Martin. So as you've all heard, making a business case means talking about the market. And that's why the market comes very well connected to the finance story, because showing that you have a business case and you have not shown the banker whether you have a market, you are highly unlikely to make a good case for your business. Yeah? So there are big issues in access to market in this country, and particularly for SMEs in the agri space. Most of the complaints is that there is limited access, which is a key challenge to many entrepreneurs. And then on the other hand, we hear farmers complaining there is no market, entrepreneurs who are doing processing complaining there are no products. So why is the missing link? Where does it get wrong? And again, there will be issues of certification and traceability. They were mentioned in the morning by the speakers in the morning. We need to think about quality assurance. And all these are some of the issues that my distinguished panelists will be handling. So I'll invite my panelists one by one. I just mentioned their name, and then they tell us overall, they tell us about themselves, what they do, and particularly what they have achieved in the last 36 months in terms of helping SMEs access market. So we start with Eunice Mutua from Select Fresh Produce Kenya. As she already says and put in her profile, that is an agribusiness marketplace influencer. So we want to hear how you influence the market and how you can help most of the delegates here who want to access markets. Over to you, Eunice.
Greetings all protocols observed. My name is Eunice Mutua, delighted to be part of this wonderful conference. Thank you very much, Strathmore University, for organizing this wonderful event. For me, this is a return because I was part of this wonderful conference in 2018, and where I was selected to represent agri-SMEs in the presidential roundtable. I do agree with you, yes, I call myself an agribusiness marketplace influencer because I'm very passionate about creating and supporting sustainable food systems in Kenya and Africa. And I also do this through an inspiration committee from the Wageningen University in Netherlands. We have been coordinating food systems programs in Kenya, in Rwanda, and we're going to roll out in other places in Africa. Yeah, so I have been very active since our last conference, and we, together with other associates, formed an association that is driving sustainable trade in Kenya and in Africa. We are called Africa Sustainable Agribusiness Agro-Processing Network. And yes, yeah, other than that, I drive a business called the Select Fresh Produce Kenya. We have a lot of experience in working with farmers and other players in the sector in Kenya and in Africa. And so I'm delighted to be part of this conversation to see how we can structure trade, help youth and everybody else access African markets. But more importantly, we have been training people via our association. We have been giving them access to markets, training them on standards, helping them understand traceability, helping them understand financing, even as our previous panel has been talking about that. It is very important to link all these dots together. And so, yes, I look forward to this wonderful conversation. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Eunice. Interesting sustainable food systems. We look forward to hear how you help most of the entrepreneurs here make their businesses sustainable. And here also sustainability means working on our stomach and on our pockets. Thank you. Yes, so the next panelist I want to invite is Angela Kariuki. She'll tell us what it means by ITC. You see, that's what's in the panelist list here. And of course, telling us more about your expertise. Certification is big, and there was people yesterday who were asking questions. I hope they are still today in. That question was not answered on certification. and hopefully you can help us navigate. So tell us more about yourself and what you have done for SMEs in the last 36 months.
Yes, thank you, Professor Wagura. I really hope you can all hear me properly. Thank you for having me, and great to see also Eunice, who has just spoken with us just now. We work also with Eunice, but allow me to introduce myself. My name is Angela Karaoke, and I'm the country lead for ITC's Green to Compete Hub. And ITC stands for the International Trade Center. We are a joint agency of the World Trade Organization and the UN, and our mandate really is to work with MSMEs, that's micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises, to increase their competitive to participate specifically in international trade. So we do that through different programs, some of which are target specific, maybe addressing women, some of which are value chain specific, maybe addressing value chains such as coffee or avocado. But our program specifically, and this is the Green to Compete Hub, our theme is really environmental sustainability. And we work with MSMEs to help them activate and then the knowledge and the capacity they need to be able to go green and actually increase their participation in sustainable trade opportunities. In terms of what we've done in the last 36 months, so the Green to Compete Hub was previously known as the Trade for Sustainable Development Hub, but we changed the name earlier in the year to help us communicate more what we do. But we've actually been in the market capacity building SME since 2018. And we don't work alone. We actually work through a knowledge transfer arrangement, and we have our local hosts here in Kenya who are very proudly Strathmore University and also the Kenya Climate Innovation Center. So since 2018, we have worked with over 65 SMEs that we have capacity built in different areas. And our focus areas are really around sustainability, and more specifically helping SMEs remain climate resilient, also helping build their capacity around the voluntary sustainability standards. And this would touch on the certifications that you were talking about, Professor Wagura. Then we also help them in terms of increasing their visibility in the online space, because we cannot ignore the fact that a lot of trade has also gone online. And then there was a previous session that touched on access to finance. And then we also have a component where we work with our SMEs to specifically help them access green finance so that they can be able to implement various different green projects within their businesses. I think I can stop there for now, and thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Angela. It looks like the word sustainability is coming very common in the marketing space and in trade. So now we know it's the International Trade Center, and we'll ask you all questions about accessing the external market. And please, if you have any question, always be typing on the chat. We'll also address your question much later in this panel. So the next panelist is Jean Giro. Jean Giro is running a company and trying to help in aggregations. You know, there was a question on the middleman, and she can tell us how she is either becoming a better middleman, a woman, or is eliminating them, and whether being in the middle, whether we still have them, is that something to continue or not? So, and we know you have served in many value chains development in this country and also in Africa. So you can tell us a little bit about yourself and what you've been doing in the SME in the past 36 months, sorry. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Professor Wagura. My name, as you can see, is Jean Giro, and my background is agriculture. I've worked across the sector in government, NGOs, and also with the private sector. in the last 36 months, I have moved from formal employment to the SME sector. And in the SME sector, the area I have gone into is markets, which I'm passionate about, and also information in agriculture. When I say markets, what I have done is actually build a market. Building a market actually means building a facility where fruit and vegetable traders can come and do their business. I think many of you will agree that in Nairobi and so many other towns, vegetables and fruits are being sold by the roadside. There is no water, no washrooms, there is the sun, so the products start deteriorating when the sun is very hot and all that. We know also that in this city, we have seen very big malls coming up. And the question that I asked myself is, why are investors putting money in malls when we see the county government fighting with the hawkers every day? We see battles of hawkers and the county government every day. And so the question I asked, what is the big issue about putting up facilities for these traders? And so I said, I will not relegate this issue to other people. Let me try and do something about it. And so in 2017, I started putting up a facility, which is up and running, of course, with the challenges that come with the SMEs. But yeah, there are women traders who sell their vegetables and fruits there every other day. So that's what I'm doing as far as physical markets is concerned. If you had asked me when I started, I would have said maybe by now I will have put up 100 markets across the country. But yeah, these things come with some challenges. I'm also putting up a digital platform, which is under development, to showcase agricultural products and services. Because having been in this sector for a long time, I know that there are so many good products and services that the farmers should have access to, but which they don't have. Very, very many good products that can help scale up production. So I'm developing that platform to showcase some of those services and products, and also to pass some updates in agriculture. Before I moved to the SME sector, I was involved in developing a regional project on post-harvest management. And I was leading development of the supply chain for hematics technologies for grain storage. Probably some of you have heard about the PICS bag, the Purdue Improved Crop Storage bag, which you can use to store your grain without use of chemicals. It's a very exciting product. It's low cost. And I believe it's there in the market in most places in Kenya and even in the region. That was my last formal engagement. And let me for now stop there, then we can move on as we continue with the discussion.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we'll come back to that issue of digital platform, whether that is the solution of eliminating the broker. And I hope some of us in the room are actually brokers, so will not be offended when here we want to be eliminated in the market. So now my gentleman in the panel at the podium, I invite you to introduce yourself, tell us about yourself. I know you are a business strategist, a coach, a startup specialist, and perhaps some of the people here in startups, and you can give them some advice. Go ahead, and the point. I hope I'm pronouncing the name well.
Well, so absolutely well. Thank you, Professor. I'd like to thank the organizers of the event. This truly is a needful event at this time to create access and awareness. Essentially, we run a company called Strengths Africa Limited. The essence is to offer business and advisory support in terms of similar things around market access, but beyond market access, also to prepare our people, okay, and those that we have contacts with, in readiness for things like the intertrade. We realize that the bane of trade is the lack of competitiveness. So one of the things that we're keen on is to availing the necessary parameters to be to all, you know, as to those that are interested, in a bid that they are also able to play, you know, local, yeah, but with a global perspective. So we call that glocal. Essentially, and how in the last 3 years, one of the things that we've done so well is to also increase the number of people ready to bring either to trade locally, that's export, and then we've also started to establish some partnership for imports. And I hope that from the course of this, to all the attendees, one of the key pillars will be that, or its key takeaway will be that, yes, you already have a link to Nigeria. In essence, in terms of logistics, in terms of the warehousing, in terms of the enabling laws as to how to interact. You see, sometimes when we lack an understanding of how the people and, you know, the environment works, we have a misconception. So we hope that through these linkages with Strathmore and the entire, you know, panel, I hope that somehow we would have been able to open a new opportunity for these so-called limitations as to market access to be available to Africans in Africans in East Africa and all those on set. So I'm so delighted, and I would allow the deliberations to go forward. And the name is Oluseyi Adepoju. Thank you so much for the honor. I truly appreciate it.
Thank you. For those who are also thinking about accessing the Nigeria market, now you have somebody who can include in your network to access the Nigeria market. So to get us on deeper into the issues of access to market. So this goes to Eunice. Why is it that accessing some market appear to be for the elite SMEs? You know, and you see that most of the SMEs by the young people, they find that they're not well connected, even with this Africa Continental Free Trade Area. Still, they have a lot of challenges accessing market. What could be the main challenge or hindrance for SMEs to access markets?
Thank you for that question. Indeed, a very good question for all of us traders. And there are many, many hindrances that come, you know, to the lives of SMEs, depending on what level you're at. But market access generally is about competitiveness. First on productivity, standards, efficiency, price, and many other systemic parameters. The reason why a lot of people are unable to access market is because different markets drive certain demand. And depending on the level of preparedness, and as we've heard from other panelists since yesterday, agriculture or agribusiness is no longer a hobby. It's no longer something that you just go to the farm, you grow, and you go and sell. It has to be very scientific sort of thought process, and that is, I think, where a lot of people are missing it. Many of us go into the market. You've heard of some farmers going into the farms, just producing without market, producing without standards. And at the end of the day, they say, oh, I don't have market, or, many reasons. So I would like to say that many of us now that we are more mature in business, my experience in Select Fresh Produce Kenya since 2013 has taught me that you have to approach the market in a certain way. And thankfully, and Angela is here, International Trade Center has been training us on how to approach market, how to be more competitive, and especially export markets. Some markets would require standards, global acceptable good agricultural practices standards. Other markets will just require, records or just some level of traceability. I would say some markets are very price sensitive. It's very possible for you to produce your product here. And for example, avocado. If you produce an avocado today in Kenya, in retail, people are selling it at 50 shillings in Kenya. 40 shillings. But when it comes to global, markets, there's such a huge market out there. It is so competitive that you'll find that someone wants that same avocado for 15 shillings, for 20 shillings, somebody else for 50 shillings. So I think many of us are missing out on accessing these markets because we have not understood, we have not done the necessary research to access these markets. So it is important for us to now start thinking about data-driven market, search. So for example, there's the Dubai Expo that is happening right now. It was just launched last week. Many millions of people are going to be flooding there. So this would be a nice opportunity for a lot of people wanting to get into the export sector to go and interact with all the players, the buyers there. So that is one of the reasons. The other reason why people don't get access to market is some markets demand a certain level of frequency. Their clients, for example, one of the clients that we are working with out of Russia, they're demanding for 100 metric tons per week. They're demanding for specific varieties. They're demanding for a specific price. I'll be honest with you, and I'd like to, commend the other panelists that have been speaking in other sessions, that the world has become very competitive. Getting products from Kenya, from Africa, sometimes requires us to be cost effective. And with the increase of challenges around logistics, sometimes it's very difficult to get very, cost effective products. So that means that we have to diversify even where we are sourcing from. So as Select Fresh Produce Kenya, we found ourselves needing to source from other regions in Africa. Yeah. So yes. So sometimes the reason why people would let go of such a market is because, number one, they don't have those volumes. Maybe that product value chain has not been developed to that extent, to produce 100 metric tons per day. Secondly, the level of standards that are being required. So even as we're developing the market in Kenya, working with farmers here in Kenya, to be able to, give them access to that market opportunity, we have to find a way of, meeting our clients' demands. So we have had to diversify and go to other markets. So the other thing that makes people not access market is, the financial obligation. Some of these contracts that are required are very, heavy on the pocket. And given things like climate change right now, you see the burden on the farmer, entirely on the farmer from production to just bear that cost. And then they bring it to now maybe as the exporter. And so you realize that if the farmer was to do the entire transaction, it would be very, heavy on their pocket. So the need for people in the value chain to come in. So sometimes people don't have the financial capability, the financial muscle to just approach some of these markets. And one of the things that I looked at in my master's, I studied master's in strategic management with a focus on impact of strategic alliances on small business performance, is, these strategic alliances, the farmer can partner with maybe, a financier or an SME, and together maybe determine the price that they want to set and share the profits. So So yes, so there are many factors that limit people to access markets, but I also say it is knowledge. Sometimes, and the reason why we've also come up with Africa Sustainable Agribusiness Agro-Processing Network, and which, by the way, Strathmore University is part of, and our Professor Hamadi Mboga, our PS. The reason why we started is because we want to create, an ecosystem where everybody is growing, where people have access to information. A lot of people in the Kenyan sector are not in organized group. I heard the presidency yesterday say they like to work with organized groups, so it is important for us to come into, organized groups where you can get this relevant information and be able to access the markets. This particular market I'm talking about, I was able to access in our own association. So knowledge sharing, knowledge information, is something that many people miss out on opportunities because they lack. Just the other day, some people were commenting us on our platform saying, "Oh, finally, it seems like I have some light in agribusiness. I'm headed somewhere." Okay, so there's many reasons why people can't access markets, and this can be addressed by systemic, systems like food systems, basically ecosystems like associations, us coming together in this conference. So yes, there are many challenges, but at the same time, there are very many solutions to addressing these market challenges. Thank you very much.
Wow, many points you have mentioned there, Eunice. Thank you very much. Market success is all about being competitive, and that's something I hope our delegates, you're getting it very clear that if you find that you're not getting markets, then work backward, check whether you're prepared. You have to get the science right, work with and this is where we are talking about collaborating with the private sector, the academia, and the government. We need to get information ready for you, to do a lot of research. That's why we are here as Agri-Food Innovation Hub in the business school, trying to get the information as much as possible about markets. And then we'll get out there and give this information also through even our programs, okay? Yeah, you have mentioned about, and this is quite interesting, low volumes. Remember, agriculture is smallholder, so we need like a social planner to figure out how to get the low volumes aggregated. And that's why now aggregation become one of our biggest challenge in agriculture today. Yeah. And I want to go to Jean and ask her whether, because she's trying to do this, she talked about aggregation and thinking about now that challenge of low volumes, and aggregations, and also link it now with the question of middlemen. Do we really need them in the first place? Are they a problem or they are a solution? It's only that they are not organized. So some of them, like the other day I was talking to the banks and they told me they are no longer calling them brokers, they are calling them aggregators because they play a lot of aggregations. Over to you. And then Angela will prepare something for us next on certification.
Thank you, Professor Wagura. And you have said it right. The brokers play a very major role. They are filling in a gap that is there on aggregation. It's just that like anywhere else, you have some bad elements who are doing not very good things, but the brokers, as we have heard, play a vital role in aggregation. And I wanted to give an example of, I worked one time on a project where we were building a farmer's own brand. We wanted to aggregate farmers' produce and market it under one brand called Farmer's Own. And one of the products we dealt with was honey. Honey, we processed and packaged it. And we went to Nakumat at the time. And we were told, can you supply 10,000 jars a week? And of course, we were working with a few farmer groups. I don't even think we could manage 1,000 jars a week. So that's what is meant by the whole issue of aggregation. And more often, when we talk about aggregation, we are more focused on the output markets. And I want to say that even the input market needs a lot of aggregation. The reason being that very often we are talking of high cost of inputs. And high cost of inputs, again, is coming because of lack of aggregation. And let me give an example. If, like I've said, you are processing honey, and there are so many small processors doing it today, when you go to buy the jar, that jar is one person, you'll get it at very high cost. But if one was able to aggregate all those people processing honey, and you went and bought those jars in bulk, you probably get it at 70% of the price. So the issue for aggregation, whether it's packaging material, whether it's fertilizers, whether it's pesticides, the need for aggregation is very crucial. Given our nature of smallholder farmers, we cannot escape from aggregation. One area I would really want to talk about as aggregation is concerned is storage. We know that farmers are harvesting more often at the same time, and they put their products in the market at the same time. And so they sell at very low prices. Most of you may know that right now we have an issue with potatoes. A 50 kg bag is selling at 600, 700 shillings at farm gate. The same bag in a few months will be selling at 2,000 shillings. So if there is cold storage brought about either by the farmers aggregating or those brokers aggregating, and you can buy the potatoes at 700 and store within 3 months, then you are able to sell it at 3 times the price after a few months. Actually, it is of concern, this issue of potatoes and other crops specifically. The cold storage is really, really needed. And even when we go to other products like potato, tomatoes, and even vegetables, sometimes where we say the brokers are not good, a broker can tell a farmer to harvest, I'll come and pick the tomatoes tomorrow. The farmer harvests and the broker doesn't come, sometimes deliberately. And a day later, another broker maybe who they work with comes, and the farmer is ready to sell those tomatoes at any price because they've already harvested. But if we have, and this is where youth comes in, because apart from going to dig the land, there are other opportunities. If you can hire like a shop in the rural areas and convert it into cold storage, where farmers can bring their crates of tomatoes, at least they don't have to sell that day. They probably can put them there for 3 days and not be subject to sell at a throwaway price because they already harvested. These are things that are really, really needed to help the rural farmers who harvest tomatoes, who harvest vegetables, cabbages and other products, French beans and all. I cannot overemphasize the need for aggregation. I think we are told the figures for Africa producer organizations is maybe less than 10% of farmers are in producer organizations, but the need to aggregate is very crucial to be able to address most of those things that are affecting our farmers. And let me just take this opportunity again to, Eunice has talked about information. And again, we cannot overemphasize the need for information. Farmers are lacking information in many things. And like I said in the beginning, it could be just not knowing where the services are and some products that can be very useful to them that they don't know. So as the government and other institutions seek issues of helping the farmers, I think we really need to work on this access to information. how do we make sure that farmers have information, whether it's prices, whether it's products, whether it's services? And while I'm still there, let me talk about soil management. One of the factors that is most ignored in agriculture is soil management. And success of whatever you grow is very dependent on the soil. We'll talk about fertilizers, we'll talk about credit, we'll talk about so many other challenges. Do we ever talk about a simple thing like soil testing? Few farmers test their soil. So every season they are putting fertilizer in the soil, but not knowing what their soil requires. And I think this is a big contribution to the raw productivity that we are experiencing. I think a study was done by some people in Egerton University, and they said soils in certain areas have become very acidic because of continuous use of certain fertilizers. And they said this region, what they actually need to do to improve productivity is liming, just liming. And you could probably double your yield. So I'm just trying to emphasize the need for farmers to have the proper information. Probably not many farmers even know who does soil testing. So how do we make sure that farmers get this information? Professor, sorry for digressing, but I wanted to bring out that point, and also the issue of credit. We've talked in many forums about issue of credit. Maybe we need to look at some new models of credit, like equity. People buying equity into SMEs instead of direct credit. We know that Kenya Commercial Bank ran what they call the Lions Den, I think, where they were trying to link investors with SMEs. In my view, I thought this is something that should be scaled up, not just by Kenya Commercial Bank, but even government and other institutions. Because as we've rightly said, sometimes it's very difficult to fund SMEs or even farmers. But instead of me going to want to grow onions, when there is a farmer who does it very well on 1 acre, why don't I put my money there so that he can do 10 acres with some equity? I think we need to probably look at other opportunities that are there to access credit other than the bank SME line that we all know. Let's explore other issues. Thank you, Professor.
So thank you very much, Jean. I mean, the question of storage in terms of accessing markets and aggregation is key. I mean, farmers harvesting at the same time. We have had, these are some of the things we talk with my student in the Masters of Management in agribusiness. We call them the typical agricultural problems. I mean, they're things that they are well known, by the way, in the literature, theoretically, and that's why you see some countries' government playing a big role. Right now, we need a social planner to organize these farmers so that all of them don't harvest at the same time if they're doing vegetables, because even if you have to store the storage, I mean, the shelf life is well known for some of these crops. So so unless you get somebody to organize them, and that's the beauty of produce organizations. And unfortunately, that's why now the brokers take advantage, because if all of you harvest at the same time, you are desperate. If it's not a benevolent broker, then you'll be exploited. Thank you very much. So I want now to go to Angela on this issue we had of certification. Yeah? And this came yesterday. It was one of the comments actually, can try to read. How can we help SMEs involved in value addition in relation to KEBS certification acquisitions? I can confirm that it is not a walk in the park in terms of cost involved. For example, to get standardization mark for a simple product like peanut butter and roasted peanut, you need not less than 20,000. Breakdown is fees like 5,000, 300. the less goes to buying standards. So they were wondering how that can be simplified and how the government also can be involved in making things a little bit easier for certification, both at the local market and also for the export market. Over to you, Angela.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Wagura. If you'll allow me, I just actually wanted to make some 2 or 3 quick points just on what even both Jean and Eunice have touched on, but I won't take more than a minute. Eunice has given a very good comprehensive insight into the access to market challenges for MSMEs. Just two things I wanted to add. One was I think COVID showed us that you cannot rely on the traditional markets that you've had, and I don't think anyone would have ever thought that borders can close and you wouldn't be able to trade. But closely related to that in terms of access to markets is for MSMEs to have some type of digital presence. It is not that always that the SMEs will be able to sell agri products that are perishable on an e-commerce site, but just having digital presence, even with very simple websites that are off the shelf, can be built of sites such as WordPress or Wix. Just having that online presence means if somebody is sitting in a European market and is looking to source for a certain product, and this region is known for say good quality mangoes, then if you are already online, you stand a better chance and at least a query being raised from that point, and it helps. It's really a case of online presence, so that you're there when somebody is actually looking for somebody to fill the gap. That's the first thing on digital presence. Eunice also mentioned that agriculture is not a hobby anymore, and it's very, very competitive. And it's very important for SMEs also to research the markets that they also want to get into. So market intelligence is a very, very important area. And here I just wanted to highlight that ITC actually does have several tools that can help businesses with market intelligence. I will share in the chat later, but these are tools that can help companies to understand trade patterns for different across different value chains for different countries. They can also help a company appreciate the export potential for a certain product, say oranges, maybe to Cambodia or something like that. It would help a business to understand what are the regulations that are needed. And then there's also a market access map that you can actually even drill down to be able to understand, which are the companies that are buying avocados from Kenya, which are the companies that are buying coffee from Kenya. I just wanted to highlight those two things. And also as relates to Jean's comments on aggregation, I completely agree. We know the issues around aggregation, but I think also for us within the capacity building space, what we need to do more is encourage businesses to have agribusiness models that are actually integrating smallholder farmers. As Jean said, if somebody else is, growing onions and they're doing a very good job, it's about integrating them into the business model, so that the economies of scale that she was talking about as relates to inputs can be better realized. But allow me then now to segue into the question that you have asked me on certification. I will answer it by sort of giving you the process of how we at ITC help our own SMEs with as relates to certification. One thing I must say is that with ITC, we really focus on certifications that will help SMEs access global markets. So this is specifically markets in Europe and markets in the US. And I know you have also mentioned local markets as well, and I'll try and integrate that into my answer. But the first step to start with the certification really is to understand, based on the value chain you're in, what is the certification that is most required by buyers in that particular value chain, depending on the market that you're targeting. So once that's decided, then you, as an SME, then you would need to conduct what is called a gap assessment as relates to that particular standard. So for example, if we take avocados and an SME is looking to export those avocados into France, we at ITC have a tool that we call the standards map, where an SME, it's an open tool, it's a public good. So an SME can actually go on there and put in the product, which is avocado, and they're targeting the market in France. And then it would actually show them a list of the certifications that are most popular for that market. So for example, if we take Global Gap, then it would then show the SME, if the SME honed in on Global Gap, it would show the SME the different categories of requirements that are needed to meet that standards. Now, these categories of requirements could be in different areas. One could be on the traceability side, it could be on the production side in terms of the inputs that are used and all of that. So the next step that an SME can actually take is to actually conduct their own assessment to understand the specific gaps that they would need to address, because all these standards, and I'm sure UNICEF and all the others that may be on the call can attest to, they have very many different requirements, often over 100 and something requirements that need to be met. So that the tool that we have developed at ITC helps to conduct such an assessment that then can tell the SME where they're okay and they have answered yes, and really where they have answered no. And then where they have answered no really is where the focus needs to be directed at in terms of addressing the different gaps. And the gaps themselves that need to be addressed, of course, have to be prioritized in one way or another, because we all know resources are limited and time is limited. So for example, if the same SME is trying to by the time the avocado is harvested, they would want to try and get that into the market. That means they have a limited time and a limited budget, which means for the gaps that are identified, they would then need to, we support SMEs with being able to prioritize those gaps in terms of which ones are most critical and have to be addressed for the buyer that is in France to accept the product, because some gaps have to be addressed immediately, some other gaps can be addressed in the long term. This support we actually provide to SMEs through experts that we at ITC would attach to the SME, so that they are not navigating this process on their own. However, as I mentioned, the tool is a free public good, and at least you can conduct the initial assessment. But beyond that, then the prioritization of the gaps should help the SME then have a strategy that would say what needs to be addressed and what sort of time frame, and also identify the resources that are needed. And this is really to be able to address the gaps. One of the biggest gaps will of course be in the training element on the good agricultural practices, and this may be again with the smallholder farmers that the particular business is working with. And then we all know that sort of training would be tied to a need for resource. So the certification, once you sort of have a better understanding of the gaps that you need to address, we then need to, and when I say we here, I mean all of us who work within the capacity building space for the SMEs, is we need to be able to assist that SME to be able to bring in resources that they then require to meet that standard. And this is where the access to finance piece comes in, that was probably being addressed in the other panel, which tends to be a challenge for most SMEs. So many of them will actually already, maybe have done the assessment and they know what they need to address, but the resources is an issue. So that's where the access to finance piece comes in, as Eunice had also mentioned. But once that access to, once the finance has come in, and remember I mentioned there's a need to prioritize the gaps to be able to address the most critical and most time sensitive gaps with the available resources. Then the SME can be able to move to a point where they have addressed a couple of gaps and are able then to actually invite in one of the certification bodies for the different standards. Using the example where we're using avocados in France, then a certifying body that can come and then do the audit to see on the SMEs readiness for certification. But once the gaps, or at least the priority gaps, are addressed, it's very key to understand that there's a whole certification process, because then it is through that audit that is done that the certificate is then issued. Now that's for the international standards. Then with the local standards, which Professor Wagura had brought in as well. For example, there's an association, I think it's called, if we take a standard like organic, there's an association called the Kenya Association of Kenya Agriculture, or it could be Kenya Alliance of Organic Network. Maybe I think if one of you is more familiar with the name, you can let me know. But within that, they also have their own organic specifications that would help an SME get to the point where they have been certified locally for organic. Now, the issue that sometimes tends to happen and becomes an issue for SMEs as well is that an SME can go ahead and get the local certification, because that is likely to have less gaps and require less investment of resources to achieve that local standard. However, sometimes there's a disconnect and a misharmony between what is the local organic standard and how an SME who has got that standard can develop from that standard to then meet the international organic standard, and that could be EU organic or something as well. So again, there is a call for the different parties that are involved in sustainability standards and certification to ensure that we are also not creating further challenges for the SMEs in terms of being able to obtain the different certifications. I think I can stop there for now, but I hope I've given, for those that are on the call and just wanted to understand a little bit how to go about obtaining sustainability standards, what the process looks like, and at least where you can start from. And I've also presented a call for everybody else that is working within the ecosystem on how we can try and harmonize things better to address some of the challenges that are also created within the environment for SMEs.
Yes, thank you very much, Angela. I mean, you have squeezed information that we offer in a whole day seminar for SMEs in the business school for them to get certifications. So thank you very much. So we'll come back to you to know whether the Africa Continental Free Trade Area also requires some certification in some countries, and what SMEs can do if there's a gap on that area. And also thinking about, I mean, what's the missing part of the value chain? I've had two of our friends and some of our participants in our programs who sent French beans to Europe. Upon arrival, they are determined to have slightly, the word is slightly, higher minimum level residue levels. And then they have to incur, worse enough, they have to incur the cost of disposing. On top of the cost of transporting, they also have to incur the cost of disposing that consignment. And what can be done better? I mean, so that SMEs don't make such kind of mistakes and where in the value chain that can be stopped. But with reflecting on that, that will be the next one that we will ask you.
Professor Agura, just kindly allow me to interrupt briefly. I just wanted to recognize the presence of the Chief Administrative Secretary, the Ministry of Industrialization, Trade and Enterprise Development. We'll be doing the closing keynote remarks, but we're just running slightly behind schedule, maybe about 5-6 minutes, Honorable CAS. So just kindly allow us to be able to wind up this particular panel. We've had a fascinating 2-day conference, and shortly we'll be doing the recap. Over to you, Professor Nderito.
Okay, thank you. We'll try now to hurry up a little bit. So I got to my honorable gentleman in the panel at the podium, just to reflect on what are the gaps for SMEs to access the Africa Continental Free Trade areas, and what are some of the recommendations you could give the SMEs here so that they can be able to access that market?
Okay, wow, this is brilliant. Thank you for that question. And I love what my fellow panelists have elucidated on, particularly on how Angela went us on that journey and touched on all the key requirements along those lines. 2 or 3 thoughts, just to enrich the discussion, considering that this is an educational platform and it's poised for research, is 1, let's start to talk about the off-taker guarantees in terms of, when we start to talk about storage, when we start to talk about the limitations as to access to market, it was imperative to also understand that the bane of the the value chain, particularly along the demand ratio, is because there are no guaranteed off-takers. So there's a model that I've seen work. One is, for instance, tobacco. We've had, tobacco, well, even though to produce cigarettes or some other, products, but there are now smallholders, okay, household farms creating tobacco for an industry. Now, these guys don't, well, pardon my French, but they don't experience when we talk about there's a glut in the market or that there's a scarcity market. There's already a guaranteed market. So one of the things I realized about the farmers, or in terms of the agricultural sector, is that we operate in isolation. And when I say we operate, I'm saying that generally we have people, it's almost like you set up a bakery and then you don't realize that you're not just a baker, okay? The mentality, and sorry I'm being pedestrian, but that's the reality. The mentality of those in the agricultural sector is more of a baker rather than a bakery, okay? The potentials and the competencies for being a baker is totally different from the competencies, all right, of being a bakery. Okay, so when we go on with that mentality, we soon to understand that being a baker means you are specialized in just farming, okay? Whereas being a bakery, you're already thinking about the business of farming. And so that takes on to that guaranteed offtake to say, hey, have we started to dimension our businesses where before we even start to harvest or before we begin harvest, are we considering who would eventually take off our product or our produce, in whatever form? And I think that requires dedicated planning. Now, moving to, in terms of the unusual models of financing agriculture, as the case may be, in a bid to broaden or deepen access, is that we must start moving from the need to dependent on finance from government, because see, we have deep pockets. If you understand, there's a model that there are 2 models that we've played with in Nigeria, and I know Kenya is not alien to this because Kenya is technologically savvy, and they're also dropping a couple of innovations along the IT world in terms of startups and what have you. Is that there's a funding around creating what I call crowdfunding. Okay, so when we thought that there was a gap when it came to access to credit, what needed to happen was that business-minded people needed to get into that sector, understand the yields, understand the return on investment. I say, okay, look, is this truly profitable? If it's profitable, as we allude, okay, can we also begin to have some unusual thinking where we can do listings, okay? Well, in the real estate, you have the real estate investment trust. Can we have a similar type arrangement for farming? Okay, for the agricultural sector, where, for instance, people can also mop up funds. And you see, the beauty of agriculture is the fact that the turnaround time, particularly for most of the crops or the produce, is shorter compared to some of the other sectors where people have to pull in funds and it will take eons of years before we start to get the returns. So that's to say, okay, can we be ingenious as to our financing model? So I'm just throwing that open, and I'm hoping that, as a research, educational organization, we're also beginning to understand that, can we start to think outside of the box, or also even be thinking within the box, or better still, we collapse the box. Now, the other thing is as to clustering. Look, back in the days when I did economics, one of the things that was clear was the competitive advantage and then the comparative advantage. So in terms of what are we good at, okay, can we also now become the best of what we are? I recall my visit to Israel one of those days, and just landing at the airport. From the airport down to town, I saw citrus lined up, all lined up. And one of the tour guys was telling us, hey, do you know that we export to the world? I was a bit shocked. They said, oh, we export to the whole of America and a host of other countries. I'm like, how are they able to do that? By the time I did my research, I realized that the farmers or the agricultural segments in Israel, they don't encounter these same challenges we experience because they've specialized, okay? So can we identify some of the things that we're very good at? And that's why I'm craving everybody. I love what ITC is doing, but I'm craving everybody to even go to the portal created by the Afri-Exim Bank. It's called Mansa. Okay, I don't know if anybody knows the story of Mansa Musa, reputed to be the richest man in the world. Well, anyway, it was because he couldn't scale somehow, and there was no structure. His empire was, taken away from him. But let's even go back to the Afri-Exim portal. It's called Mansa, M-A-N-S-A. The Mansa platform is the repository of, information and insights as to what goes on in Africa, from West Africa, East Africa, South Africa. And so, look, if we don't begin to deepen our insights as to what goes on in Africa, every other thing we're doing will just be theoretical, and we cannot make any advancement. There are tons of information that we made available on that platform. And I believe, I crave everybody, if you're interested in truly playing on the continent, because then and only then you must equip yourself with information, and that way you're able to offer valuable advice or even solutions along the lines of what the continent needs, which part of the continent needs what. And that ties in on to the, entirely with what AFTA is trying to do. There are negotiations going on right now, particularly in West Africa, which I'm aware of, hoping that somehow we can have discounts as to tariff, along those lines. And, particularly in Nigeria, we're also trying to negotiate what can we have superiority advantage over? What can we offer to Africa? And then what do we do best? So that's the question we need to start to ask ourselves. Once we perfect our, our skills, our competencies along those lines, then truly, when it comes to the issue of access, there will really be no debate. But let me run through a few things. Returns on investment.
We are running out of time. I don't know whether you have finished. 1 second.
Great. So the growth potential is enormous. Can we feed ourselves? We are not even prepared to feed Africa. Beyond feeding, can we produce enough, for our industries? We are not even yet ready. Okay, so I believe that because of time, I will drop that. But I hope that this would, equip us to start to ask the right questions. Okay, yes, we could come up with all that is available. Tons of this information is available online. But can we start to ask the right questions? So I'm asking you all right, as an educational body and the attendees right now, what are the right questions we need to start to ask about access to market in Africa? All right, and I leave it on that. Thank you so much for having me. God bless you.
Thank you. Now I give the other panelists maximum of 1 minute, possible 55 seconds, just to give your one concluding remark on way forward and very specific recommendation. Let's start with Eunice.
Thank you very much, Professor Wagura. 1 minute is very small, but it is okay. We wanted to contribute to what our colleague in Nigeria is talking about, but it's okay. I would say I'm challenging Africa and Kenya. We are a youthful continent and country, an average of 19.7 years of age for our youth. So we must start thinking about how to engage our young people. my challenge to every young person, every entrepreneur, everyone wanting to even become an entrepreneur, given the opportunities that Africa Continental Free Trade Area is offering to liberate our economies, is let us take the risks, the business risks, the financial risks, the social risks, the production risks. Let us take every kind of risk that we have to take, because it is true, like Mr. Frank from Trademark East Africa said, that not every country can produce like every other country. So there are specific things, and even what my colleague from Nigeria has alluded to, that we must start thinking competitiveness for countries. And so that is my challenge to everybody. But more importantly, I want to encourage young people to view Africa Continental Free Trade Area, Africa as one market where you can go and work there, where you can go and trade there. And I'm also challenging African leaders to open up these African countries truly for our African youth to prosper. And then my last challenge is to the African Kenya leaders to reduce the cost of production, because as Kenya, we also have to be competitive. So having said that, I just want to commend Strathmore University for having us, and let us continue encouraging food systems to prosper in Africa. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eunice. Angela?
Yes, thank you, Professor Wagura. My closing comments really is, as we explore this new continental free trade area, is let's not also forget about the importance of sustainability. Because if we as businesses are not resilient as relates to the climate change that we have seen, then we cannot even be in a position to exploit the trade opportunity. So within this is a call for, first as industry, and many of us who work in the capacity building space for MSMEs, is to really work more cohesively to help SMEs be able to integrate green measures within their own businesses, within academia, such as Strathmore University. It's really a call on you to help us plug the knowledge gaps around sustainable sourcing and also sustainable consumption. And for yourselves as SMEs specifically, is also not to forget or sideline the environmental agenda, because we have slowly started seeing, even within trade, sustainability criteria start creeping in slowly within regulation. We saw the plastic bags regulation a few years ago, and we'll start seeing more of these sustainability criteria creep into regulation. So a call for you as an MSME to start seeking out the knowledge and see how you can incorporate this into your own business as well. And as Eunice said, very thankful to Strathmore University team for having us on this panel today.
Thank you. Thank you, Angela. And Jean, yeah, 55 seconds, concluding remark.
Okay, thank you. I think first I would say the Continental Free Trade Area is a big opportunity for us as a country and the continent. But I would like to urge the government, the academia, the industry to give us the information, to give the SMEs the information. Perhaps if the trade ministry should have an outreach program just to let us know what are the opportunities that are there in this market. I don't know whether maybe they've put up a platform yet where we can see what is available in Uganda, what is available in another country, so that we don't replicate, so that we are able to look for our niche markets within that facility. And I want to say Strathmore has been commended for having this conference, which is very good, but I would also say this should be a regular thing by the Ministry of Industrialization, regular reaching out to the SMEs, updating them on opportunities, the regulations, and so many other things. So again, we cannot overemphasize the need for information. Secondary credit, which has been talked about so much. I think the banks and the financial institutions should also have outreach programs they need to come for the interest of our country and creating jobs. Let them go out there. Let them see which are the successful cases that can be scaled up, and they can put their money there, as opposed to where they are waiting in the banks for the SMEs to go. Let them also come out there and identify cases that they can scale up, because we have heard about the figures. I don't know, 2 million SMEs fail every so often. I think we can all help to stop this and help create jobs for the youth. Lastly, we cannot overemphasize the need for aggregation in smallholder farming. We probably need to define the models that we need to use to kind of promote aggregation, because without that, the smallholder farmers then will probably just remain what they are, farming as a hobby. We need to offer them support and see what can be done. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, my honorable panelist, and also my honorable delegates for being attentive. I'm sorry that some of the questions you had, we have not been able to answer them. I call upon them to continue answering them in the chat. We'll take up all these challenges as academia. We have the Agri-Food Innovation Hub. We try to come up with market system development webinars to follow up on these conversations and to give the SMEs more opportunities for our conversation. So more will be coming in the future. Thank you very much, and over to you, Martin.